In the previous video, we saw how to run the app, the Hello World app, on an emulator. In this video, I'm going to connect a real Android device, my own Android Nexus 5X phone, and run our app on that. Now, if you're using Windows, it is important that you install the Google USB driver when we configured Android Studio using the SDK Manager in the earlier video in section 2. And in addition, depending on the model of phone, you may need to download and install a specific driver for your phone. That's only if you're running on Windows. Now, on a Mac or Linux machine, however, you can just plug the device in and it all works. So that's a bit easier, and I'm going to be doing this on my Mac. So I'm going to assume that in the case of Windows, you've got the necessary drivers installed, and you can connect your phone to your computer using a USB cable to transfer files. Now, if you have any problems doing that, then you do need to resolve them before continuing with this video. Samsung phones on Windows, for example, need KIES, K-I-E-S, installed on Windows, or certainly did at the time I'm recording this video. So do check if you're running on Windows if there's specific software drivers needed for your Android device to communicate with Windows. Alright, so with that said, the first thing to check before you're using your phone to run your apps on is to make sure that you can transfer files from the phone or tablet. Now, if you can't do that, then anything else we try to do isn't going to work. Now, some phones come with USB cables that are for charging only. They don't allow data transfer, and if you get problems copying photos, for example, from your phone to your computer, then do try a different cable. We have seen problems in the past that can be resolved with a new cable, so certainly if you're having issues, do try using a separate cable. Now, if you've got normal file transfer working though, then let's get started running apps on a real device. Now, I've got some software that I'm about to start on my phone that lets me record the phone screen so that I can show you what's happening on my phone as well as what's happening in Android Studio. So I'm going to switch over to the phone now, start the recording, and allow you to see what's actually going on my phone. Alright, so now you can see that my Nexus 5X screen is showing, and what we're going to do is enable the developer options on this phone. Now, developer options aren't in any of the normal settings menus. Instead, they're actually hidden until you enable them. And in my case, we go into settings to actually do that. So I'm going to come down here, go into my settings. And this may be slightly different depending on the phone that you're running. But in the case of the Google Nexus 5X, I scroll down to the bottom. Okay, so once I'm on this settings menu, I'm going to click on System in my case. So it'll be something along the lines of Settings, About Phone. You need to get to the menu that has the About Phone option. So I'm going to click on System in my case. And you can see down the bottom here, I've got About Phone. And what I can do there now is I can actually click on that. And that brings us to this About Phone option. Now, just before I scroll down to the bottom under this build number, do note that this option here hasn't got a developer's menu option at the moment. So what that means is it's not enabled. So in the case of my phone, this is where that menu will appear. So I'll go into About Phone, and you'll need to find that for your device. Then we get down here and scroll down to the bottom. We've got this build number, as you can see here. So what we need to do is actually tap that 7 times. When you do that, you'll get a message that developer options have been enabled. And it's not very intuitive, but that's deliberate. So it prevents people from turning developer options on without knowing what they are or what they're for. And in the case of using an Android device for testing, we need to have that developer's option. So I'm going to tap this build number 7 times. And notice that we've got a menu, a little toast message popping up there now. And I've finally got this message here. And because I'm using a Google Nexus 5X, I've got a pattern that I can specify to unlock this phone. But if you didn't have a pattern, you might have a PIN or some other mechanism to unlock the phone at this point. So I'm just going to unlock this and continue. And now you can see that it says down the bottom, you are now a developer. So basically tapping the build number 7 times turns on the developer options and lets you use the phone for development purposes, which we want to do in this course. So you now should have a new menu on your phone. It should either be in this menu here, or if we go back one, you can see now that we've got this menu developer options showing on the screen now, which wasn't there before. So your first challenge in this course is, if you're not running a Google Nexus 5X, is to find that menu on your phone. So in my case, you can see it's there, so I'm going to click on developer options. Now, there's a host of options in the developer options menu, but we're only really interested in 2 of them at this stage, and only one is really important. Now, the first one is stay awake. You can see that on the screen there. Now this prevents the phone from locking while it's charging, so you won't have to keep unlocking it while testing your app. It saves a bit of time and annoyance, but if you don't have that option, then don't worry. But if you do have it, then it might be a good idea to tick it, and that's if you have something like a password or pattern, as in my case, to unlock your phone. So I'm going to select that anyway, to leave that on, so that it'll never sleep while charging, so that it just saves us a bit of time during our testing. But the important setting is USB debugging. So I need to scroll down a little bit to see that. And there's USB debugging in the debugging menu there. Now without this one set, you won't be able to test apps on your device from Android Studio. So you need to make sure you turn on USB debugging. So I'm going to do that. And you can see we've got this pop up, and you'll probably get a similar message on your phone, and it's asking us to confirm that we want to allow US debugging. In this case, that's fine because we are using it for development purposes. I'm going to click on OK. So once that's done, you want to plug one end of the USB cable into the phone and the other into the computer. So I'm going to stay on my phone display and select that now and plug my device in. But just before that, what I'm going to do is switch back to Android Studio, and I want to bring up the screen where we normally start our app. So I'm going to come back to there now, and I'm going to click on the Run menu. And you can see here on the list of connected devices, at the moment there's nothing. There's only the virtual device that we've previously configured that we ran our app in the last video. There's nothing under connected devices. I'm going to come back to that shortly, but for now, we'll go back to the screen on my phone again. I'm going to plug in the cable. And I've now got this message appearing on my phone. It says allow USB debugging, and it's giving me the message about the computer's RSA key fingerprint, which I have to obscure for security reasons, but it's just basically a large number, and it's asking us whether we want to allow that. If I switch back over to Android Studio quickly, you can see at the moment under connected devices, there's a code there, and it says offline at the moment. So what I'm going to do now, as I switch back to my phone's display, is I'm going to click on Always Allow from this computer, because this is going to be my main test computer. And I'm going to click on OK, and once we do that, we'll switch back over to Android Studio. I've clicked on OK there. And now if we switch back to Android Studio, you can see under Connected Devices, there's LGE Nexus 5X, and that'll be your phone's model, and it tells you also the API that it's running. In my case, I'm running Android 8 on this phone, API 26. So I've now got a device that we can actually test on. So basically what we've done is we've set up the phone and allowed it or given it access so that we can use it to run applications to test. And again, with the deployment target on, you can see that we've got this Nexus 5X available as an option now, which wasn't there before. And we've still got our available virtual device, which is for running the emulator. But we've now got a real device as well, which we're going to be using to run now. So you can use the same mechanism as I've used before. You can just come up here and select Run and choose either the connected device, and just if I unplug the USB cable now, which I'll do now, you can see that that then disappears. Connected device is none. If I plug it back in again, give it a moment, you can see that it actually comes back again. So once we've done that one-time configuration, you'll be able to access this without going into any menus or setting anything else up. And keep in mind that if you're running on Windows, you should probably also disconnect the device properly from the taskbar, as you would like a USB memory stick or something along those lines. But obviously, in my case, on a Mac, I haven't done anything to the phone storage. I haven't written any data to the phone, so it was okay just to unplug it. Now, if your phone doesn't appear, or you can't see its full name or the serial number, then it probably means that you haven't ticked the USB debugging in the developers options that I showed you earlier in this video, or that you haven't allowed access from your computer. In my case, so let's actually try running this. I'm going to click on OK to start it running, and then I'm going to switch back to my Google Nexus 5X phone and check that it works. So clicking on OK, and I go back to the phone now. And you can see there on my phone that the app was launched automatically, and we've got the Hello World application now running on my Google Nexus 5X. Now, by the way, you don't need to be running Oreo API 26 on your phone. As long as your phone is running API 17 or higher, then the app should work. But if your phone isn't running at least the minimum SDK that we set, you'll get a message when you select the device and click OK. And in fact, looking at the slide here, you'll see that there was actually an indication of this in the phone's description before clicking OK. So again, your phone needs to be running the minimum SDK that we set, which was API 17, when we configured this project. Now, if that's the only physical device you've got, you can change the minimum SDK. You can go into File, Project Structure. So File, Project Structure. We can click on App down here. And you can see we've got on the Flavors tab, come over here to Flavors, we've got minimum SDK version, and you can change that to match the version of Android running on your phone. We can select that. But actually it doesn't really matter what's available as the drop-down, because what you can actually do is you can just type the API number that you want to set into the box. So for example, if you're using an API 16 device, you would change the 17 to a 16 just by typing it, click OK, and the project updates. You can see down the bottom Gradle is working away. And from that point, when you go to run it again after it finished updating, you'd be able to run that on your phone, assuming in this particular case, it was an API 16 device. But in the case of what we did, I'm just going to go back and make that change again. Go back into project structure, app, click on flavors. I'm going to set it back to what it was, which was in my case, 17 being the minimum version that we defined at the start of this project. So in this example, as long as your phone's running API 17 or higher, it should work fine. If not, you'll just need to change the minimum SDK level, as you saw me do there. But with 96% of devices now running API 17 or higher, it should be fine in most cases. So that's it. That's how to run an app on your phone rather than using an emulator. So it's running fine as you saw. And if I go back now briefly to the phone now, and if I actually rotate this into landscape, so I've moved the phone, you can see the app successfully changes to landscape automatically. So that's it, how to run an app on your physical device. So as long as you've enabled developer options by tapping 7 times, as you saw me do, you can turn USB debugging on whenever you want to use your phone to test your apps. And you may want to switch off USB debugging when you're done, just to remember to turn it on again when you come back to developing on it. But there's nothing wrong with leaving USB debugging on if that's something you want to do and you're testing on a regular basis. Alright, so that's the end of this section. In the next section, we're going to start creating proper applications, and I'm going to be explaining some of the concepts like main activity and layouts and so forth in more detail. We haven't done any programming yet, but we've now got the development environment set up, and we can now run apps using emulators and physical devices. So we're ready to start.